Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Florida Friendly class for today on February 10th here. We have classes every week, and today we're going to talk about living friendly in a deed restricted community. This is for those who living Florida friendly in a deed restricted community. This is for those of you who might be in a gated or not gated community that has fairly strict homeowners association rules. And this particular class that I teach kind of goes over the people. Basically, we talk about what to do with the yard, but also how the neighbors can get along and what they're looking for, and how we as environmentalists can give them also the nice look that they're looking for. My name is Lilly Browning. I do work for Hernando County Utilities here in Hernando County, Florida. I'm the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program Coordinator. This is my email right here, LillyB@hernandocounty.us. I do have a PDF version of this video that I can email to you. So if after the class you email me that at that email, that's 2 L's in the middle there, and ask for a PDF, because there's a lot of information. So you can look at it in writing as well. And this is being recorded. It'll be available on Facebook this afternoon, most likely. And also within a few days, it will be uploaded to Hernando County Government's YouTube channel. The cool thing about the YouTube channel is several things. For those who don't like Facebook, a lot of people do like YouTube, and you can actually watch it from your television. You know, I don't know why anyone would want to see me really big, but you know, you get to see the slides really big. And also, within a day or so of it being on YouTube, you do have to give it some time. YouTube automatically generates closed captioning for me. Now, apparently I don't speak English that well, but they do a pretty good job of the closed captioning. So if you have someone who would like to participate in these programs but need closed captioning, that's the way to do it. Wait for them to be on the YouTube channel. But let's get right into this and talk about, okay, I don't live in a deed restricted community. I think Karen just moved from one, didn't you, Karen?
Yes, I did.
Yes, I forgot to welcome Karen, who's with us. Karen Mojica is with us from Mosquito Control. She's going to just give a little update on what's the buzz in mosquito control. I will never not use that term, Karen, but she's also helping me with crowd control today. So yes, Karen just moved from a deed restricted community, so she knows, you know, what it's like. And for those who are in one, but you want to be Florida friendly, you want to be good to the environment while you know, not being given a hard time by your neighborhood, we're talking about the ways that you can do that today. So there's us. We're here because we love plants. We're here because we love the environment. We're here because we love to make a statement with our landscape. Meanwhile, you live in a deed restricted community. There's a reason you moved there. Let's put that right out there. You know, you made that choice. Maybe it was because mom lived there and you wanted to be close to her. Maybe it was because your husband wanted to be right at a golf course. Maybe it was you liked the idea of having a lot of activities and friends. Maybe you like the idea of safety, relative safety, with, you know, people fairly being screened as they're coming in and out of your community. You like the idea that, you know, it looks nice. Let's admit that everybody likes that. And you don't have any neighbors with cars up on block. You don't have litter places. And what does that all do? that helps protect your biggest investment, that being your home. Now, I don't live in a deed restricted community, but I am assuming those are some of the reasons that people choose to live in these communities. So do remember, it was your choice to live there and to abide by these rules. You signed a covenant. So now we're going to talk about ways that you can be Florida friendly and still abide by their rules and get along well with your neighbors. So there are those of us, we love plants. The plants mean a lot to us. But the average person, believe it or not, is not a plant person. It seems odd to us that, who are plant people, that people walk around and not consciously noticing plants. They kind of know they're there, obviously, and they don't consciously notice them until they look bad to that person. So that's kind of, what we're dealing with as well. But the average person is going to evaluate a landscape on what it looks like. Out of all of their senses, their visual senses is going to be most important. Does it look good to them? They don't necessarily care what kind of plants are in there. They just want it to look good. Don't get upset about that, because those of us who love plants, remember I just said, they don't necessarily care what kind of plants are in there. That means we can use the environmentally friendly plants that we want to use, as long as we do it in a way that is visually pleasing to those who may not care that much about plants. So what is it that they're looking for? Well, everyone loves large, colorful flowers. So if we just have, some of those around in our Florida friendly landscape, that is, going to be very useful for selling our landscape to our community. They like large plants. They like canopy trees and with a clean growth habit. And they do like complexity, but they want organized complexity, if you can understand that, with various patterns. I'm taking a lot of this information from a publication that the University of Florida put out called Cues to Care. So we're giving our neighbors these cues, and some of them are subtle, psychological, but so that they care about, what's going on in our yard, or that they view it in a positive way. So what are people looking for? We're not talking about any particular plants yet at this point, but what pleases them? What do they like? They like plant beds, and they like them with curved lines. Kind of makes it look very professional. Like they like yards basically that look like a human is actively involved in that yard. That's what they're looking for. They like design sophistication, no raggedness. This is what, when a survey was put out, this is what their answers were. They tend to like open vistas, and we're going to get into why. Why do people like open vistas? What was least important to them in this survey was what plants, what type of plant material. They don't care about that. And remember, I said, don't let that upset you, because that opens the door for you to use the plants you want to use, as long as you do it in a way that speaks to them in a positive manner. What else do they like? They like a yard that, like I said, looks like is actively managed by a human. It's well kept. It is not messy looking. Especially in a deed restricted community, you can't get away with a messy looking yard. So they want a neat and tidy looking yard. They want it to look like a human is involved in that yard, spends time in that yard, and humans are welcome in that yard. And they have to understand the purpose of each portion of your yard. Why? What is this little, corner's purpose? Why is it there? What is it doing? Chairs make an obvious purpose. This is where we sit down and enjoy time outdoors. But each they have to, in order to feel more comfortable, they have to understand, they have to be able to read your landscape. All these things you may be thinking to yourself, my landscape, I don't care what anybody else thinks. But remember, again, you chose to live in this community where there are high community standards. And what I always say is basically in these communities, the front yard is like a magazine cover. Every front yard is a magazine cover that sells that community. So even though it's your yard, you pay for everything. Basically, every front yard belongs to the entire community because it all affects everybody's property value and how things go down the line. So just think of it that way. Your front yard is like the showcase window of a store, and you're selling your community. This is what you've chosen to do. So you do have to please other people as well as yourself. And what do we like about landscapes? Why do we like what we like about landscapes? Here we're going to get into a little bit of psychology. And I got this again from that Cues to Care publication from the University of Florida. So they came up with 4 theories about what makes people tick when it comes to yards and landscapes. The first one is the innate evolutionary theory. It's kind of built in all of us. Second one is the prospect/refuge theory. Third one is the emotion/pleasure theory. And the fourth one is the cultural/experience theory. And all of us, when we look at yards, kind of take pieces of all of these theories, I think. Let's talk about that first one, that evolutionary theory. And in they got some people and they had them look at different type of landscapes, and they judged like their brain waves and their reactions. So what did people respond most positively to is a preference for a savanna-like characteristics, low ground cover, even texture. You see where our love of lawns may have started to come from. Pastoral, they like the depth of the field, scattered little groups of trees. Why? Because that evolutionary theory, that is kind of where we all came from. It being able to see a long way is comforts us in that nothing's going to sneak up on us and eat us for dinner. And yet there are different trees for escape from the sun or, shelter for yourselves. You can see, what you need to eat for dinner, and you can see what, where you can hide if something is after you. It's nothing we need to worry about today per se, but it's still innately built within us. This is one of the theories. And even though these deep wooded forests, we think they're beautiful, we start to feel a little nervous in them for long periods of time if we're not familiar with where we are. That's that theory. So that kind of shows you, what people have looked for. So over time, when people, of course, first, the only people who made gardens were those with the money and time to do so. And so what did they do? They copied savannas. They had, landscape designers started to come on the scene. But what made their clients happy was a savanna type, even though in a very formal type landscape, but a savanna type landscape made their people feel peaceful. And even the Japanese gardens, that they're like little mini savannas of the same thing. So that's kind of what's built innately in us and what some people are looking for in a landscape. The second theory is the prospect/refuge theory. And this came about, due to it's just survival. We need the opportunity to see, to prospect, and to hide, just like that savanna. And so we like open spaces, low shrubs, and clumps of trees. Basically, what makes people feel more comfortable is if they can, especially in a new place where they've never been before and on somebody else's property where you're not always all that comfortable anyway, because you're intruding on their space, that they can see around them. That's kind of what's going on, these innate theories. Okay, then there's our own experiences. Those other two things are kind of like built into us innately. These next two are based on personal experience. Something happened somewhere, and like I said, maybe people aren't even aware of all types of plants, but some types of plants speak to them. Something pleasant happened there. Maybe, you know, their parents had that particular plant in their yard, their grandmother did. So it's based on emotions. There's a reason you like that. Maybe, you know, you got your first kiss near some kind of apple tree or something, you know, and it just brings back pleasant memories. So that is, people have a preference for those type of things, but it didn't alter their aesthetic preference for those savanna type characteristics. And the other one is culture, how we grew up. Experience and culture modified some of those preferences. So a grown adult, if they grew up like this picture above, maybe in Levittown, New York or something, you know, with a similar post-war home that looked like this, that's going to be one of their preferences. I have down below that, like if you spent summers with your parents in Miami, you know, this type of landscape and this look is also going to speak to you. I threw the other one in because I'm originally from Pittsburgh, so this looks like basically any Northeast city there. And even though that's not the best landscape at all in the world, we see that and we feel a sense of home. So, you know, that also affects what people are looking at. Does it make me feel at home and comfortable? The interesting thing, though, is if they took children who did not yet develop these experiences and, you know, for the different cultures they grew up in, children will pick a savanna looking landscape every single time. Kind of really interesting there. Okay, but through that culture and experience theory, there's cross-cultural agreement. Even though you may feel more comfortable with the South Florida looking home, you may feel more comfortable with a suburban New York home. Somebody else may feel more comfortable with, you know, row houses in a city, or even like New Mexico, you know, adobes, things like that. Across cultures, everyone is looking for that openness and that smooth ground surface and evidence of water. Why is that? Because water is life, right? And if we don't see water, we want evidence of water. And what is that evidence of water? Usually green vegetation. It just makes us feel safer. That's kind of how those theories go. There's those theories, then there's cultural norms that we deal with all the time. What will the neighbors think? And some of you may not care, but those who choose to live in a gated community, it's all about neighborhood and it's all about the looks. So with social acceptance, we want to fit in with the aesthetic norms. And in fact, if you want your yard to become certified as Florida friendly, one of the very first things on that list are, does it fit in with the aesthetics of the surrounding neighborhood? So you want to have good relations with neighbors, exhibit that pride of ownership. And as I mentioned before, if you're in one of these communities, basically, even though it is your private space, your front yard is kind of like public space. It's a magazine cover that represents your community. Also, the other cultural norms, everyone's concerned about property value. I mean, who wouldn't be? It's almost all of us, that's our biggest investment. So people think that the property value is affected by green lawns, large trees, it's well kept and have colorful plants. In reality, realtor might tell you different, but there's that. What that does is attract buyers. It may not, the assessors of your home may not pay attention to that, but certainly the people who want to buy your home do. And people also want that sense of security. Is it well kept? Is this yard cared for? Does it have those open views, or do I feel, claustrophobic and kind of afraid in here? And they do tend to lean towards traditional designs. All of these things can be accomplished while using Florida-friendly plants. That's the good news about that. Now let's say, okay, let's pretend I live in a deed-restricted community. I don't, but if I did, obviously I'm going to have a big concern over how my yard affects the environment over what it looks like. My neighbors might be just the opposite. They are more concerned with what it looks like than how it affects the environment. So these cultural ideas and cultural norms are going to collide. And so I might have a lot of maintenance knowledge, and I'm concerned about wildlife, and I have an environmental attitude. But let's see what happens when my ideas of these things and my neighbor's idea of these things collide. So maintenance knowledge, we see this. This might be how I see myself in my yard. Just, well, I wish I was that young for one thing, but also, this may be what I think is happening here. It's just a beautiful meadow open to the wildlife, and I'm at one at nature. That could be what I see is going on in my yard. But our neighbor, with their maintenance knowledge, they may see this. What I see is one thing, they may see it as something completely different. And when they see this, they also see that. That's the first thing they're going to think of too. So probably reality is somewhere in the middle of those two, but I'm just showing, how two different people can view things two different ways. I read this once and I use it for a lot of situations. Do you know none of us see the same rainbow? Just because rainbows are made of prisms, and where we are all standing, we all see a different one. So life is like that. So we need to find that middle ground where we can come to agreement with our neighbors. Okay, I'm concerned about wildlife. And this is how I view myself in my yard with my concern for the wildlife, using my own little Bitmoji avatar here to show you this is what I see of me and myself in my yard because I'm concerned about wildlife. My neighbors are also concerned about wildlife, but define concerned in a different way. I'm concerned about the wildlife and their well-being. They are concerned about wildlife and how it might affect them negatively. So, they may see things completely different and have a different definition of concerned and, have a totally different feel about my yard than I do. And there's my avatar running away from that scary looking yard. An environmental attitude. I try to have a good environmental attitude that is, let's save the environment. So I may see my yard looking like this, just the most beautiful, serene, place that I love to hang out. The environmental attitude that my neighbor has might be completely different. They might see the same yard in a totally different manner. Because number one, it's not their yard. Again, they're it's not their space, so they don't know how to read it. they don't know how to take it, and sometimes they just react in negative or fearful ways. And ecological landscapes tend to have not that great of a reputation. People think there's only small and light colored flowers. It's just less dense vegetation, and no one really ever prunes it. It's just the plants are just let to go free and do whatever they want, with an uneven growth habit and kind of scraggly looking. There's no organization. It just looks messy. Doesn't look like people are involved at all. It looks like an abandoned house. That is what some people, that the reputation. I'm not saying it's well deserved, but that is the reputation that it's got. So how do we take elements of an ecological yard and have it be more acceptable to our neighbors? Well, here are some neighbor-friendly design elements. Oh, we can meet halfway. Take some of those patches of wildflowers. I just watched a program yesterday. It was fantastic, called Lawns to Wildflowers. There's actually a website, lawns2wildflowers.org. And I watched the gentleman who presented it, telling you all the fantastic reasons and benefits to changing at least part of your lawn to wildflowers. So, but if you do that, see the way this top picture has done it. So they're using the lawn to create borders, walkways and borders that kind of say, hey, this is on purpose. This is a bed of wildflowers here. Or put those pathways help a lot. Pathways tell people what's going on in your yard. Again, they need to be able to read it. They need to be able to understand it. So a pathway and borders clearly tells, anyone entering your yard, hey, this is a bed of flowers I'm trying to cultivate, and I think they look pretty, and they're bringing pollinators. So the bigger, more plants that stand out more, put those near the pathway so that they are within a good view. And that's just, it's creating spaces that people understand. Define beds, and that's another thing that is written on the Florida Friendly Landscaping Certified Yard checklist. You should have well-defined beds so that people understand, okay, this is a plant bed here. That's why there isn't, turf. And your yard should, as they walk through it, shouldn't take that much oral explanation from you. It should explain itself. If you find yourself, constantly defending your yard, maybe some of these design tips will speak for you. That's just some of the ways that we can do it. I absolutely love this picture here. Doesn't look like Florida. I mean, it could be maybe South Florida or something, but the design elements here are amazing because it's a very formal looking landscape, isn't it? With that fountain and the walkways and everything. But look what's going on. They have plants that are topiaried, cut very formally. There's that tiny little, very pruned bush that's causing a border around what? Around just, wildflowers just going crazy. So what they have done is taken formal elements and put in the wildness and the craziness that we love, framed it in and made it all work together. I think that's a really fantastic, and you could accomplish the same thing, get your wildflower bed and maybe then surround it with a low growing, well-pruned shrub, put a nice, holly that you keep very well trimmed or something in there. Combine those elements, but it also speaks to them that this is on purpose. This is not a patch of weeds that I ignored. And the butterflies and everything around there should all then also help them realize what's going on. And you can also, put in bird feeders and bird baths and things like that, which I'll let Karen talk about bird baths at the end, but so that they know, hey, this isn't a patch of lawn I ignored. I'm doing this on purpose because it's going to bring more pollinators and be more ecologically beneficial. Also, linear plantings in rows or curves, trimmed shrubs, always having those foundation shrubs that we are traditionally used to and can be accomplished with Florida-friendly plants. That helps people understand what's going on. There's a design process going on here, and that helps people understand. They've seen that their whole lives. They've seen rows of shrubs their whole lives, so they can understand what's happening there. And have fun with color. Maybe, don't go too crazy, but do it in good design using the color wheel. Why not, and these two pictures show they used the contrasting colors that have bold patterns, and they used a lot of color composition. People like that attracts their attention. But if there's every, color under the rainbow, it might get too chaotic for them. So try to keep good design. I usually tell people it's your yard, do what you want. And that's basically, a rule of thumb. But today I'm talking to people in a deed restricted community. And so there are rules of design that it would behoove you to follow so that the neighbors can really like it and be attracted to it. And so can you. Don't clutter. There are those of us who just love plants, and every new plant we get hold of, we're going to find a place for it in our yard. And then you might end up looking like this. So you don't want to clutter in your house, and you don't want to clutter in your yard as well. Blank spaces are okay. And that goes back to that savanna look. That smooth ground cover doesn't have to be lawn. It can be Asiatic jasmine. It can be some other kind of ground cover, just that low ground cover that makes us take a breath in the design of what we're looking at. Okay, now we're going to talk about some curb appeal, because that's what it's all about. It's about curb appeal. We're in it for the environmentally friendly aspect of it. The neighborhood you may live in is all about that curb appeal. And I believe the number one rule of curb appeal is being able to see that front door, so that your neighbors feel welcome. And this is going to be for your benefit. If they come into your yard in order to analyze it, you want them to feel safe and comfortable, especially if they're an HOA board member, so that they have a positive attitude about your yard and don't, tell you have to change this, and this. So curb appeal is very, very important. And to me, that front door, being able to see that front door, is like being able to see a person's eyes. You don't feel all that comfortable with a person if you can't see their eyes. And I think a front door is kind of the same way. Do you feel comfortable approaching that house? Do you feel safe in that yard? So we're going to go over some of these. And I brought my avatar back, and she's going to say, which ones have good curb appeal, that feel like someone's there saying nice to meet you, and the ones that may not. This one, how does this make you feel? Now, if you lived here, maybe this is intentional. Maybe there are people who are hiding their house. This looks fairly well taken care of, as far as where you can see where the turf and the bed, meet. It's not raggedy there. But also, do I want to approach this house if they're hiding the porch? Do I know what I'm getting into? So that kind of, to me, is like, nope, I would run away from that one. I don't want to approach that house. And then I might take a bad review back to my architectural review board about your house. So, you got to think of that. Here we go. Curb appeal. Yes. Nice bed, turf. It looks welcoming. This one, older home, very open, very, and I don't see one single bit of turf here. That's the interesting part about it. They have those nice low ground covers, created by some non-turf plant material. Front door is very visible. You feel very welcome there. Yes. Again, there we are. Front doors right there. This is interesting because if you look at the yard, we have a reversal of materials here. Mulch in the plant beds, and the turf apparently is being used as a walkway. Kind of just an interesting way of thinking about things. Seems like a nice, friendly person would be there. This one, well, we can't even see the front of the house. We're only looking at the garage. Everything's overgrown. I would not be that comfortable approaching that home either. This one, now this one's interesting. Obviously, somebody's caring for this yard. But there is still, they're hiding the house. And you can't see the front door. I don't even know how to get to the front door in this house. And so this one kind of might make me feel a little off-put and a little scared, and then, be in a bad attitude when I take it back to the architectural review board. Here's another one. This one has all kinds of things going on. I don't know what happened to those trees. Looks like a storm and nobody did anything about it. They're utilizing an invasive exotic plant very heavily, that Boston fern, probably because it was cheap and easy to do. Nice pine mulch around the one bed, probably because it all fell out of that tree there. Still, it's not very comfortable looking to me to want to approach those people. That's like, I would be, again, nope. Don't like what's going on there. And I would have a poor attitude to take back to the review board. So how can we work with our HOA? Let's not work against them. Again, we signed that covenant when we moved in, that we said we would abide by their rules. So how can we do that and still get what we want? You place plants in traditional foundation planting beds. Said you can use the plants that you want to use, but if you plant them in a traditional style, people will look fondly upon that. Make the beds as large as you are allowed, not any larger. And remember, mulch hides a multitude of sins. And it just really neatens the whole yard up. It creates a cared for, neat appearance. Mulch is your friend in these situations. Turf. Turf is our biggest, I don't want to say enemy because it's not necessarily an enemy. It's the biggest thing we struggle with. And a lot of people say turf is the biggest water user. And that's really not the way to word it. I will tell you 60% of the water Hernando County Utilities delivers does go to turf, but it's not the turf who's asking for water. People put too much water on turf. Let's put it that way. So the more than it needs. So turf can make areas appear larger, but you can be really creative about it. And what they have found, I took this from another extension agent, when it comes to turf, frame it, don't farm it. Now, a lot of communities, you have to have a certain amount of probably St. Augustine Floritown turf. Well, I would have exactly that amount, but look how this is done on the left. They put that turf in the front and then created these really big beds. They've done similar things here. What that does is putting the strips of turf in the front and giving you that low ground cover tricks the eye into thinking there's more turf than there is, so that it accomplishes giving them that comfortable feel from that savanna look. And so then the yard looks neater and better maintained. Use trees, of course, for energy efficiency and for shade, but don't use them to hide your house or your front door. Use as many as your regulations allow. And this could be a class unto itself. You don't want to use trees that are going to get bigger than the space than you have and cause problems later. Use a variety of plant material. In fact, a Florida Friendly certified yard has at least 15 different varieties. That it attracts wildlife. Diversity is always the key to good health in any organism. So it helps avoid insects and disease problems. It also, if you have different varieties of plants and these plants for some reason start to go bad or, look bad, you have different types of plants around that aren't going to be affected by whatever is troubling them. And it adds color and texture. Just remember to put like plants together in mass. That's a kind of a professional look. If you go to Disney, if you go to Epcot, don't you see just beds of the exact same plant? That really gives a good look. And it also helps the wildlife and the butterflies find those plants. Okay, here we go. We're going to pretend here. Rita and Bill are serving in this presentation. They're playing characters here because Rita doesn't really live in an HOA, but she's going to play a character here for me. So we're going to meet Rita, and let's say she's the wild community member. She's the wild growing community member. She loves native plants. That is true about her, and is very, very, very concerned about the environment. So here's the community member, the environmentalist. What are her wants? She wants to protect the environment. She wants to attract wildlife. She does not want to use chemicals. She does not like chemicals. She wants to conserve water. She likes the natural look of things. And why I have these ones in red, you'll see when you get to the next slide. She feels safe and in control in her yard. She wants to feel pleasure in her yard. She doesn't want to go out there and be frustrated because she's fighting with the neighbors. She loves her yard. She wants to feel pleasure in there. She wants to be able to express herself. But she also wants to be proud of her community. She moved there for, various reasons too. Not really. Remember, she's playing a character. Real Rita lives in the woods, but she's proud of her community. So here's our next character, Bill, the HOA president. He also doesn't really live in a gated community, but this character he is playing, Bill, the HOA president. What does he want? He wants your yard. He wants Rita's yard to protect his money. He wants all his neighbors' yards to protect his investment. So he wants that yard to fit in with the community. He wants to be able to understand your yard. He may not verbalize that or realize that, but that's an innate thing. He wants to make sure that all the rules are followed. He wants to know and understand that a human has dominance in this yard. Now, these red ones are where him and Rita's goals are the same. He wants to feel safe and in control when he's standing in your yard talking to you about your yard. He wants it, to make him feel happy. He wants to feel welcome there. And he also has the goal of adding pride to the community. So they have some of the same goals. So if we take these red goals, those are meeting places where they can come together and then build on the rest of how they can come together. Now, for working with your HOA, like I keep saying, remember, you signed that covenant, you signed that contract. So don't get too negative in your responses to them. Have a plan. Last week, we did a class, and you can go back on Hernando County Government YouTube, as well as my Facebook page, and watch it was 7 steps in 3 years to a Florida friendly landscape that really talked a lot about planning. You can go back and have a plan, have a good plan, especially for you. You want something very professional looking that you take to your HOA. And learn basic design principles. And you want to, before you start using the terms, well, my yard is Florida friendly. You can't do anything about it. My yard is Florida friendly. Learn what that means. Understand the principles. Attend my classes like you have been doing. There are myriad of websites on Florida friendly landscaping. There's a Florida friendly handbook that you can get online. There is this, which I tout every week, Florida friendly landscape guide to plant selection and plant and landscape design. Very, very useful. And be able to identify Florida friendly plants. So this is homework that you're going to have to be doing. The other thing is not only know what you're presenting, know what they're looking for. Study their rules and regulations, memorize them if you can. Because then if they try to say something that is incorrect about their own rules, you'll be so knowledgeable, you'll be able to point that out to them. Review how that approval process to your architectural review board or whoever it is, review how that's going to go and be prepared for it. And meet with your HOA board members. You know what's even better? Become a member. I know you're thinking, oh, good Lord, no. But what better way to change the system than from within? Check their plant lists and their regulations. Be very aware of their turf requirements. If they insist you must have 50% of a turf, not only 50% of a turf, but they may tell you where, such as there may be rules that, you know, turf has to meet your neighbor's turf. 2 strips of turf have to meet together. So on the edges, you may have to have turf that meets your neighbor's turf. Things like that. Be very aware of that. And pay attention to the restricted elements, the things that they say you can't have, and choose your battles. I mean, don't annoy them with your little gnomes in the front yard if they say they can't be there. Look for, keep in mind what you're trying to do. Is it to tick off the HOA, or is it to have an environmentally friendly yard? The newsletter, each time it comes out, read it, know what's going on in your community, know how you're thinking, know where your yard is, get that boundary survey, and just in general, be a good neighbor, pick up after your pets, just be a nice person. And just remember, because your yard, again, is always on display, keep up at least your front yard all the time as if your house was for sale. Because it is selling your community. Now you're going to ask me, and I know you've been waiting to hear this, isn't there a law? Isn't there a law that says HOAs can't stop me from having a Florida-friendly landscape? Short answer is yeah. It's called Senate Bill 2080, Florida Senate Bill 2080. Here are some of the points on the Senate bill. And there is a law, but, and I can tell you what the law doesn't say. It doesn't say that St. Augustine Floritan turf is bad. Doesn't say it's not Florida friendly. Why is that? It goes back to right plant, right place. So in some situations, turf might be the Florida friendly choice. As long as that turf is you're not using excessive amounts of water, fertilizer, other chemicals, and trying to keep it perfect, it can be the right plant in the right place. Therefore, that's why this law can get, a little vague from time to time. And there have been, there's a seminar that I attend like every year or so called Legally Speaking. And there's a particular lawyer, she's usually over in Orlando, that stands up for all these people who are fighting their HOAs. And she has maybe a 50% record in actually winning. And why is this? Because sometimes some of these laws are kind of vague. And also, it's expensive. The HOAs have money, more money than you do. And so they'll just keep going and going and going. And you may run out of money, or someone in your house may get sick, and you just say, "Well, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not keeping up this fight." So that's what's been occurring. So the best way, like I said, is to go back. Like I said, be a good person, get on the board, do this in a neighborly, friendly way rather than in a litigious way would be my advice for that. So in summary, before you go off saying, "Oh, but my yard is Florida friendly," know what you're talking about. Know what Florida friendly is and what that means. Also be very familiar with your regulations of your HOA. Don't assume that, they don't allow or they do push this. Study it, know their own regulations, and keep a good attitude about it. You signed that covenant, remember? So there has to be a way that you can live there and get the plants that you want with the look that they want. So work with your HOA, not against it. Again, those long strips of turf in the front make the turf areas look larger, make the non-turf areas look larger. Just put foundational like shrubs in large beds, because that's what they're used to seeing. Don't hide your front door. Be friendly looking. Define areas. Let your yard speak for itself. Don't confuse the neighbors. And remember, you're living in a shared community, and your yard should make not only you happy, it should make at least everybody else not unhappy. Let's put it that way. And here are some upcoming classes that I have. Next week, this might even be a continuation of this class. You can look at it that way. Native plants for formal landscapes. I'm going to go over 20 native plants that will work with formal landscapes, and I'll show you that in a second. Then we have other classes coming up. Bugs. I wrote it wrong last week. Bugs that bite, sting, or taste you on the 24th. All of these are Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. Then in March, we're going to start with some spring bloomers. And this one is going to be fun. March 10th, incorporating edibles into your Florida-friendly landscape. That was never really covered when Florida-friendly landscaping first came out, because they really, really concentrated on low maintenance and all that. But more and more Florida-friendly agents are very knowledgeable about edibles. And so they're really kind of working this in, and it can be done in a very Florida-friendly way. So next week, when I do the formal or natives for formal landscapes, here are the 20 plants I'm going to cover. I'm giving you a little preview of these plants, and I got them just this morning, right out of this book. I have to put it against me so you can see it, not against my green screen there. I got them right out of here, and I've chose these for several reasons. Number one, the criteria is that they are native and that they can be maintained in a formal looking way, that they're not kind of all scraggly looking, and that they're native for Central Florida, because that is where I'm based out of. So some of these plants may not work necessarily for you if you were in North Florida. Probably all of them work fine in South Florida. But South Florida also might have other options. But this is a Central Florida focus. And like I said, if you want a PDF of this, email me at Lilly, LILLYB, at hernandocounty.us, and I'll send you a PDF of the whole program. Here are more resources for you. This 10 strategies for working with your homeowners association. I covered quite a bit of them in this, but a lot of these will help you in your journey. And you have one that covers that Senate bill completely as well. Okay, Karen, I'm going to invite you to join us and let us know what's new in mosquito control.
All right. Well, as we're heading into the spring season and it's going to be getting warmer, it seems like every day we're getting a little warmer. And as you're working on your gardens and your yards, just keep mindful of anything that can possibly hold water. So a bottom of a flower pot, a decorative ornament, if you have any tarps or any kinds of things in the yard that could possibly hold pockets of water. Remember, those are where the mosquitoes are going to be breeding in there, and that's what's going to keep your yard from being a happy spot. So if you could just be cautious, tip it out, dump and drain it at least once a week. That will prevent those eggs from hatching. That'll keep your gardening more comfortable, a better environment to live in. If you do choose to use a bird bath in your landscaping, just be certain to brush that out as well as rinse it out at least once a week. The eggs will kind of attach themselves on the sides at the water line. So even if you're just dumping it out, they will still stay there unless you kind of just brush it a little bit. That's a great practice as well. We always say wear your mosquito repellent when you're outdoors gardening, wear light colored clothing, keep yourselves protected at all times. And if you're finding you're having a problem with mosquitoes, please feel free to contact our office. Our guys are here. They will be more than happy to come out to your yard, find where they're coming from, whether it's a tree hole or it could be something not even visible. It could be in a retention pond or a drainage area down the road a bit. Just give us a call. They'll be happy to come out. They'll do a little walk around, see if they could locate the source of that water that's creating that mosquito problem for you. I will be happy to put my email as well as my phone number here, and just keep it tacked up on the fridge. We're here to keep our county safe and keep your gardening more comfortable for you.
Thank you very much, Karen. All right, and thank you all. And I will see you next week for those native plants for formal landscapes. Stay in touch with our Facebook page as well for all kind of really cool upcoming events. Thank you and have a good day.